Don't you think it's about time for a podcast that's more fulfilling? One that's about the vibrant exchange of ideas and perspectives that happens when we actually come together. We got you covered. Welcome to the Deep Blue Project, where the depths of conversation meet the waves of personal experience. This is a real, raw, and unscripted show about everything from leadership lessons to self-awareness, wellness, and the latest current events. We cover it all. We have a rotating cast of guests as we share our personal stories, insights, and opinions on the issues that matter most. Plus, we have a blast while doing it. The Deep Blue Project. It's not just a podcast, it's an experience. And now your host, Chris Workman.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Deep Blue Project. I'm happy to have with me Carrie Matthews. Carrie and I have kind of linked up on LinkedIn. I try to bring people along who are of the same mind, who are going through some of the same things, because that's what we talk about here on the Deep Blue Project. Carrie, welcome. Welcome to the Deep Blue Project.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I've heard many good things about you. I've listened to you. I've followed you on LinkedIn as well. So it's a pleasure. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Carrie posts a lot on LinkedIn, and that's where a lot of us give our thoughts and what we do, and that's kind of what drew me towards Carrie. But what also drew me towards Carrie is she is also still an active police officer. So I like Carrie. Tell everybody a little bit about where you're at and what you do, and kind of how you, I guess, matriculated into talking about, the things that we talk about, and how the loss of your father kind of brought you into this space.
Absolutely. Again, my name is Carrie Matthews. I am a 20-year veteran with the Chicago Police Department. I'm active currently. I've worked in a district. I've worked on teams. I've worked inside. I've worked on the desk. I've done various roles, which I'm very happy about because you get to learn a lot of things. I come from a family of police officers. My grandfather, my father, my brother, my husband, his father. So it's definitely, like they say, it's in the blood. It definitely is in the blood. I have two children, a son 15 and a daughter who's 13. My husband is as well on the job. I actually took the test when I was maybe like 25, 26. It took me 2 years to get on. So I was 27, kind of later in life, older a little bit. So I did that. I did the best.
Wiser.
Well, I don't know if I'd call myself wiser. But, after looking back now, who knows what the decision, I would tell my younger self now. But I'm very active with speaking up recently due to my father taking his life in July of 2023. I've had officers, friends, coworkers, civilian friends that have taken their lives as well throughout the years, and it's devastating. But I believe that the suicide of my father is one that just took me down a very dark path and affected me in a way that I wasn't realizing that it was affecting me. So it was just very hard for me. And now I talk about it. I openly talk about it. I won't stop talking about it because it makes people uncomfortable sometimes when I do. And I won't stop because my father was the man he took care of his family. He worked 3 or 4 jobs to put my brother and I through Catholic schools. He did the best that he could. He came from not a great family background for him as well. Not a great upbringing. His father was abusive. My dad was an alcoholic. He was strict. Very strict. I got yelled at a lot. So to keep my brother and I in line, I always say that my brother was the favorite. So I kind of got the breadcrumbs left behind.
Right.
But he encouraged me to take the job. And that's one thing we had in common. We were on the job together for about 4 years until he retired. Wow. And he retired after 35 years. He was actually shot doing a search warrant in 1988, just through the leg. Not just through the leg, but you know what I mean? Like it was through his, Yeah, it was through his leg, and he was off of work for a year. And I like to say, like in my teenage years, that was again one of the worst times because then he was home. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get away with anything. Like it was, he was recovering and, the rest of us were suffering per se. And I went into the academy knowing that I wanted to do the best that I could because my dad, it was very, like I said, stubborn, never said I loved you, never was like, way to go, good job. So I wanted to prove to him that I could do this. Being a female on this job isn't always the easiest. People aren't always cheering you on. He never, said anything negative. It was always do the best you can there, like basically don't make me look like a fool. I'm sure, in his own way of thinking. And I busted my butt in that academy. Did everything, I went full throttle with it, and I graduated number 1 in my class. And still, even giving the speech at graduation, I didn't even get a good job from him. Everything was very stoic, and it's okay. Like I've come to terms with it, how it was that in other ways, I guess he was trying to tell me he cared and he loved me without telling me. And so us being on the job together was kind of weird because people would refer me to him or, are you anything like your old man? Do you place like your old man? And I'm thinking, I don't know, because he never brought work home. He never talked about it. I remember him and his guys on his team. He was on a tactical team, sitting around in a basement, smoking, drinking, playing cards. I had to like bring the beer to them with the pull tabs, take it off. They throw me like $5.
Right.
The old time copper stuff, telling stories that were definitely not for my little ears to hear.
Right.
But a couple years ago, my dad was taking care of my mom. She had Alzheimer's. So they both were retired. He was taking care of my mom, and my dad would, as I like to say, hold court on his front porch where some of the retired guys would come and sit. They'd BS with him and whatever, because he wasn't really going places. And one time I went there and they were all there. I call them the old men, like, what are the old men talking about today? And they actually let me sit on the porch and listen to their stories. So I'm 45 years old, 44 years old, listening to these stories. And I'm thinking, I made it. I finally got to sit with the old men, listening to stories. And some of their stories, I'm like, oh, I probably should know these things. What's the statute of limitations?
Right.
But it was a nice feeling for me. And my dad was a very strong man. He had ginormous hands, and everybody used to comment that to me and, about that. Like, your dad's hands are huge. You get hit with that, you're going to be knocked into, next year. So he was he took care of his family. He took care of himself per se, and never complained. Like, never was one to, woe is me. This is that. He kept to himself with his feelings and things like that. And I would have never guessed that was the way that his life would have ended. Never. And when I had children, he became another person. He loved my kids. My son and him were best friends. My daughter is the only granddaughter, so she was definitely spoiled by him as well. And my son and him would do a ton of things together, and he would buy him things. He would show up to their events, and I'm thinking, where was this guy when I was growing up? You're just buying stuff. Like, to me, I had to wear like hand-me-downs. I'm wearing my brother's shoes, things like that. My kids are he's like, oh, I took him to the store to get this. And I'm thinking, well, that's great. And whenever I had problems with my kids, he would talk to them, or he'd be like, Kara, I think you're too rough on them. And I'm thinking, what? Who are you?
Wow, yeah.
I'm too rough on them?
What'd you do to me?
Yeah, exactly. Like, did we forget my whole, So, but it was a good time. It was a good sight for me to see how he was with my children. And we took my son to Florida for his 8th grade graduation. That was his gift, a party or a trip. So he chose, Universal and Disney. So we went there. My dad every day wanted proof of life, is what I call it, because it was hot. He wanted to make sure the kids got enough water. Did you give them breaks? Were they in air condition? Now, mind you, he never asked how I was doing. Did I have enough water? And so every day I was sending him pictures of the kids or FaceTiming him or calling him or just letting him know everything's okay. And the last day that we were supposed to leave the next day, I thought about staying, like extending it a couple more days because we were having such a great time. And I got a call from my friend who it's actually my mom's friend, my godmother, who used to take my mom out every Monday and Thursday just to give my dad a little bit of a break and saying, you need to call me back. Your dad's unresponsive. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, he had a heart attack. And I was kind of just standing there because I didn't want my kids to know anything. I called her back and she's like, Carrie, you need to get here now. And I said, I can't. I'm in Florida. What's going on? She said, there's blood underneath your dad's nose. He's unresponsive. And right there, I knew. I knew what he had done without anybody telling me. So I kind of freaked out a little bit, but then I went into like police mode. Okay, I got to get people there. I got to get somebody there to get his weapons in case they're out because you never know who's going to be coming in and out of the house. My dad was one, he didn't like people coming in the house because, he never knew who they were and I don't want people in here.
Right.
Everyone's going to steal from him. Mm-hmm. So I had to call some friends and have them go over there to kind of help with my mom. Some of the police that arrived, it was their call, I knew. So they were calling me, letting me know what my girlfriend actually called and said, Care. And I said, he killed himself, didn't he? And she said, yes. And I just lost it. And I just went into that whole thing of there's no way. There's no way. This has to be a mistake. There's no way he could have done this. I'm asking the detective, is there a crime scene? Do I need people to come there to get clean, to clean it up before I get back? He's like, there's not really any blood. My dad had a big head, so that kind of, I understand, there was no exit point, but I didn't know what to do at that moment. So I'm calling everybody. I'm calling some of his friends. I don't know if I was looking for someone to make sense of it for me or to tell me like, Carrie, your dad was in a bad way. This is what he said. This is nothing. Nobody knew anything. No signs, no nothing. And earlier that day, I had sent him a picture of my son with The Mandalorian. My son's a big Star Wars fan. And his response was, oh, he looks really happy. I said, yeah, he is. And that was the last communication that we had had. And I'm thinking, was that not enough? Like, he did it afterwards.
Right.
So I scrambled to get on a flight home. I have people picking me up. I get home. My mom stayed with her best friend. I go to the house by myself because I needed to see it. I needed to see what was happening, and you could never tell that anything happened there. Never.
Right.
And I had said, I want to go to the morgue. And of course, everybody was like, you're not going there. There's no reason to see that. You don't want to see that. But to me, I'm a visual person, so I need to see it to believe it.
Right.
I'm thankful for good friends that talked me out of it because at first they're like, we don't just let people in the morgue to see people. And I'm like, well, do you know who I am? I'm the police. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, you're not stopping me.
Right.
Do you realize, do you know who I am and where I come from? This is not going to happen.
And I appreciate my friends being like, let's really think about this.
Right, that's good.
And being like, you don't want to go. So I had to start taking care of my mom. I had called my brother to get him there the night before so he could take care of things. And I just couldn't figure it out. I searched and searched for a note. Nothing. And then telling my kids, I had to tell them because my mom kept saying it over and over, like, he shot himself. And I'm thinking, well, I need to tell them before she tells them, not knowing that she's telling them. And so they took it hard. My daughter took it hard. My son, he's still suffering from it. My daughter's still suffering from it. My son was his words were, he must have been really sad to do this. He must have been really alone. And what a way for a 14-year-old to think. He's comforting me. We're going to get through this, Mom. And I was just so angry, super angry that my brother, the same. If we didn't have kids, I don't believe we would have had a wake because we were so angry. And thinking about it now, for the kids, they needed to say goodbye. For his friends, they needed to say goodbye because everybody loved him. He was the man everybody loved. He was a good time. He was a jokester. And so we did it. And it was packed. I mean, from the time it started till the time it ended, his whole team that are still alive, they came to pay their respects. People that he worked with, which was very nice to see because you don't see that a lot often, the closeness and the tightness of officers. And I went in first and I had my piece of anger with him. And to this day, I don't understand why. And I'll never understand, like they say, we'll never understand why. And would it even matter if I knew why? Some people have said that to me. Like if he told you why he did it, or if he left a note, would it make you feel any better? In reality, no, because he's still gone.
Right.
I wish that I've been racking my brain, going back, being like, what did I miss? What did I miss? I knew that him caring for my mom was taking his toll. I had asked him, like, let's look for nursing homes. Let's look for people to come in the house, but he didn't want anyone in the house. But he didn't want to go to a nursing home either because he said, we put her in a nursing home. She's going to die, Care. Okay, Dad. So he took it on all himself, and I didn't realize it was hard because my mom had lived with me for a month after my dad killed himself. And it was extremely hard. I don't know how he did it, especially in his young age. My daughter and my son would go there and help out as much as they could. I would go there, but working and getting days off canceled and things like that is a lot. You can't just take off, and say, okay, well, I need to go do this. You have to work. We all have to work.
Right.
So I was searching for people to talk to that was or had gone through the same thing I was going through. And unfortunately, there was no groups. There was no other police officers, families that have gotten together where you can talk about it. I wanted to go to a grief group, but not a civilian grief group.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go and talk about the police life or guns or things like that and, have people attack me at a group that didn't understand our way of life. So, I did utilize our EAP and I've continued to go, and I just kept figuring, like, I have to do something. I have to get people together so they can talk about this because I know I'm not the only one. And I know that I'm not the only person that is hurting from this because in Chicago, we have a lot of officers that are taking their own lives, and it's sad. And the biggest fear that I have is they say when somebody in your family kills themselves, the likelihood of somebody else is terribly high. Mm-hmm. And that scares me to death. And that's why I'm very open about how it's affecting me, how it's affecting my family, because I don't believe that people realize that. And I'm not saying that I should say to somebody, don't do this because of how other people are going to feel. I just want them to see the other side of what they're going to miss. Their pain ends, but ours just begins. And it's something that for the rest of our lives, we're going to deal with. My kids are forever going to deal with the fact knowing that their grandfather killed himself with not knowing anything. So I speak out a lot about this. I have gotten positive and negative feedback as when with people, correct. Sure. And it's, you shouldn't talk about this. This is something that you should bring to your therapist. This isn't something that should be talked about openly. And my thing is, if it makes you uncomfortable to talk about it, then that's exactly why I need to keep talking about it. Because nobody talks about it enough. We're all worried about the person that is depressed or sad or, showing the signs of isolation. But what about the person that has the happy smile and inside they're dying? like
Well, I
Robin
think
Williams.
some of the things that we try to unpack, and when we do all these things, and you've hit a lot of them points, it is why we do what we do. It's because people don't sometimes realize what's going on behind those issues. We all have our own personal things. It doesn't matter whether you're a police officer, whether you're a doc, whether you're anything. But you've described a lot of stuff, even with your father, that is what we do ourselves. Like we do that. The part where we come home and we don't talk about work, or we don't explain things, or we don't treat our families in a way that we feel we should be treated. I mean, it's not it's not something that you say this is a bad person for this. It was just how their coping mechanisms were. And it was even worse, I'm sure, back when your father was a police officer and the things that they dealt with, because they really grew up into the suck it up, you
Yeah.
know,
Yes.
way of doing things. Like they're the ones who were, man, they were really hardcore, did not look at things, packed a lot of things away that you can't help. And that's some of the things that we talk about. And you and I were talking prior to this with my friend Barbara Rubel, who talks a lot about this, that you can't push all that stuff in the back of your head. You can't put that stuff in the closet, so to speak, and expect that that's not going to come back and affect you in some way,
Right.
because
Right.
we all do that. We all do that. So when you get to that point, and I'm not saying because we don't know, and this is not saying what your father, because I can tell from the way you speak about your father and from his life and the people around him. Your father was a great man. He was a great police officer. He was somebody who stood up for what he believed in, and he did the job. And that's what we all do. Like our job comes first. Like
Yes.
everything about our career comes first, and we've all done that. And that's kind of what led me to where I was, because throughout my entire life, it's the job comes first. My
Yes.
family would suffer, my son's stuff would suffer, things would suffer. But I think his way of making it back up, and this is just in your conversation, is he was able to really release that. And that's what the grandkids brought out in him.
Oh, yes.
And I think we see that, and we see that a lot with our families, because we try to kind of make up for it. I mean, there's maybe something that makes us realize that, and sometimes too late, unfortunately.
Right.
I mean, that's why we do this. That's why I have the podcast. That's why your story is so important. Why everybody else's story is so important. So we're trying to teach these younger generation and people coming out that don't push that stuff aside. Have the courage to deal with that. You put a post out a couple days ago, and it really resonated with me a lot, because it's a lot about what I try to speak about and what we do when we go through these things. And I can feel that pain that you're talking about. Trust me, I can feel it, and people don't understand when we do this. Like I can see you, we're talking, we're having a conversation.
Right.
They're not going to be able to see you, but you can see that in people. But the biggest thing that you talked about, and it's most important, I think, is the first way through this is your mindset. Your
Yes.
mindset has to totally, totally change.
Yes.
And getting yourself away from the negative portions of everything, because you can't stop. Look, it's negative. So a parent, somebody taking their own life in your life, and somebody that's close to you, it's not going to be a positive experience.
No.
But your mindset has to be something that you work on, and it's tough. And you talk about that. And you
Very
talk about
tough.
that a lot. And I think that that's something that maybe you can elaborate on, is trying to help yourself and finding a way, whether it's through others or just yourself, to first take those steps to kind of change that mindset, or get yourself in that, I don't want to say positive mindset, but a better mindset than where you were from where you've been, and how you get to where
Absolutely.
you are now.
Absolutely. I was circling the drain. I was going through the motions of life with trying to take care of my mom. I wasn't even able to grieve my dad because I had to take care of my mom, my kids. And I was taught as well, like, you keep everything closed mouth. You keep everything in the house. You don't talk about things, the word I can't, we couldn't use. There was, they say there's no crying in baseball, but there was really no crying with me growing up. Suck it up and figure it out and move forward. And with my kids, I don't talk about work with them, the serious things, but they know if there's something funny, of course, I'll tell them what happened. But I don't want them to be scared of life, because they will be. I mean, of course, we see the worst of the worst. No one's calling us to say, come over for dinner. They're calling us
Right.
because they're having the worst day of their lives. But with my dad and stuff, I am more open talking about it. Like, they see me cry, they see me upset. They know I'm very open about going to therapy. I'm very open about, I write, I journal, which has helped me tremendously. I've talked to other people, and I've found people that aren't like, oh, this again, we're still talking about your dad. Never, and that's a
Right.
very important thing, as well as people identifying that you're not the same person, because I'm a very loud, outgoing person. I'm not a big person of crowds, but if you're having a backyard barbecue, okay, I'm there. And I enjoy that. Well, with my dad, after that, I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to see anybody. I just wanted to make myself disappear without making myself disappear. And a retired sergeant friend of mine sent me a message saying, there's this retreat for first responders, and it's a trauma retreat. It's free. They put you up in a hotel. You're there for 4 days. Why don't you check it out? And I'm thinking, like, screw you. Like, what are you talking about? I'm fine.
Right.
The old,
Normal
I'm fine.
Cop response.
Right.
Normal cop response.
Right. I'm fine. Like, I don't need that, suck it up. I'm totally fine.
Right.
But every day she was like reminding me, I think you should just go. Just go. And I'm thinking, you know what, to get you off my butt, I'm going to call, I'll see what's going on. And I went, and it definitely changed my life. Sitting there with like-minded people like us, first responders that have gone through things like us, and openly talking about it without judgment, or with me saying, I really was at the brink that if I died today, I'd be okay with it. And them not rushing to take me to a hospital and sign me in. It was, okay, let's talk about that. Like, when you're feeling that way, what do you think you could do next? Or what is your next step? And it definitely saved my life. And I'm so thankful, because that was probably the first in my movement to do better for myself. Because I am the type that I will do for everybody else. I will take care of everybody else. Again, put myself on the back burner until I burn out. And that's what's happening. And finally, it's almost a year and a half, and I am just starting to be like, it's okay for me to be happy. It's okay for me to smile, as much as it's painful for me to do this. But talking about it and being honest with myself, which is the scariest thing ever, of being honest with yourself, of, I'm messed up. And we're all messed up anyways from the job. We all have our own traumas from the job.
Whatever it is, wherever we are.
Right.
See, the thing is, we can talk about it. And that's one thing that I think we get from this, is because we're like-minded, because we can say things without saying things.
Yes.
Because we understand each other without saying things. And one of the hardest parts, and the things we talk about, and I got God bless your friend who stayed on you, because that is something that is really important. That people, if they can see that in you, if they can see that you need that, that's just the beginning of that recovery. That's just the begin. Like, this is something that it's not a secret sauce. It's not a pill. It's not something that's going to change. Like, this is something we talk about all the time. And I'm sure you're finding, and this is an every single day process. This is not something that you can just say, hey, I'm better now, let me move forward. No, because you're unpacking all this stuff. And like you brought to light, when you have to be honest with yourself, The scariest thing is now you're pulling all them little things that you have put in the back of your head and you have put away that you now have to take your time and get rid of. And
Yes.
when I say get rid of, I mean you face it. I don't mean you would never get rid of it. It's not going to go away. There are parts of your life, there are things we've dealt with, whether it be personal or professional.
Right.
And until you acknowledge them and give them their due, that's always going to be there. And I'm still working on that myself. That's something that's an everyday thing. But that's where that mindset comes in. You have to be able to do that every day, especially on the days where you don't want to do it. That's the
Absolutely.
days that is tough.
Yes.
That's the hard days. But see, that's the days when I have to say that the things like LinkedIn and the people that we're connected with, and when they post certain things, you read that each day, and they put positive kind of things up there every day, and they put their story up there every day, and you can look at that and go, I'm not alone. We're not starting off from that negativity every day. That's all in your mindset.
Yes.
You have to start with yourself. You have to start with yourself. And I thank you for being one of those people and having the courage, really having the courage, because that's what it takes to be a person who now can tell your story, because now your story will resonate with someone else
Right.
and it will help that person. We help each other through that. You got a long road to go, Carrie. We all do. I
Right.
mean, we all do, but it like I said, it seems you're taking those steps to do that. And I thank you for being one of them people, because that takes a lot.
Well,
That
thank
takes a
you.
whole lot.
Thank you. And I don't even know what led me to LinkedIn. I think someone mentioned it to me and I was like, well, let me see what this is about. And somebody said it's kind of like a professional Facebook without the BS. It's actually like good things. And so I was like, all right, let me give it a try. And that's just where I found so many different people that think the same way that I do and that know that this is important, that police officers killing themselves, we should never think it's normal. We should never think,
Right.
oh, another one did it. No, it should be anger, like, why did another one do it? And yes, we have access to our guns, and that's what makes it so easy, easier for us to do it, to go through with it. But it should never just be like the pastime of, okay, well, another one did it. Let's, get together and we'll mourn and then we just move on. And again, tuck that away. I don't want it tucked away. And I will keep talking about it. And I've met people like you and other people that want to discuss it. And I'm thankful for that because it makes me feel less crazy. I'm sure we're all crazy in our own minds, but this makes me feel less crazy. And I've actually had people reach out to me and message me stating, I have daughters and I had a plan and I was going to take my life until I read kind of what I say, the other side of the story. And he goes, I could never do that because I don't think my kids or my wife are as strong as you, they could handle. And I said, this has nothing to do with strength. I had nothing else. Like, what was I supposed to do? I had to get up and move on. I didn't want to. I've spent many days in bed or staring out the window, not comprehending everything. And I had to do something. And my thing was, I'm going to make something positive out of this horrific tragedy that I've had. And I've had other people ask me, can you talk to somebody? Can I have them email you? Or can you talk to my daughter? Because she's going through a rough time and you're a female, maybe she'll listen to you. And my answer is always yes. Yes, because I would rather talk and they could say, oh, Carrie's full of it and we're not going to listen to her. Or she has no idea what she's talking about. But you know what? For that hour, they might not have been thinking about how bad their life was. And that's important to me. It's very important that people know that in that dark moment, it could be an hour, 2 hours, a day, 3 days, that there is some glimmer of light somewhere. You just have to see it. And until you see it, you're going to be stuck. And I was stuck for a long time. And I felt like I was getting better. And then my mom passed from Alzheimer's. And I was in the room with her, with my kids. And I didn't know Was it better that I had my kids there to see my mom pass, or that my dad did it and they weren't there to see it? I'm sure I'm going to make a therapist very rich one day with, the trauma I've put my
Right.
children through. But that was hard too. And that again made me go deeper and deeper into the dark zone because I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know how to care for my kids at that time either because they were mourning. My daughter and my mom were super close. I mean, my daughter would just move her over in the bed and lay with her.
Mm-hmm.
It's heartbreaking that you see the relationship and my mom is an angel. I mean, she's a wonderful, wonderful lady. And again, because it was literally a year to the date almost of my dad and her. And I didn't know how to do it. And I went back to the retreat. I went and talked to people and I'm getting better. I'm getting there. I'm sad. I'm angry still. And all of a sudden I'm a orphan. I have no parents anymore.
Right.
And that's a hard pill to swallow as well. And just moving forward, like you said.
But look at, you're acknowledging that now, though. You see that now. You have a vision of why you did the things that you did, or why you chose maybe not to look at that. Why you chose to maybe not address that situation at the time. But you're aware of that. And I think that's one of the things that makes us better is if we can now be aware of that when it comes up. I've seen for myself that I can better address that now. I can recognize it for what it is, and then I can put things in place that I have learned through, whether it's therapy or things I've learned through talking with people like yourself, like through this podcast and all the different people who have gone through things like this. People laugh at me, and I say it every single podcast, and they go, "Why do you say it all the time?" I said, "Because it's true. This is my therapy. I
Yes.
learned so much from this.
Yes. I agree
learned
with
so
you.
much from the people. I learned so much from the people who have written books, the people who have been out there talking about it, the people who have been doing this for years. And it all started from them having their own trauma
Right.
and their own issues. If we don't continue that process, if we don't continue to learn from them, then it's going to be a recidivist thing. I don't want people to wait until they're in their 40s and 50s
Yes.
to be
Agreed.
like us and go, "Wow, smack in the head. I've just done this for 40 years and I've lost marriages and I've screwed up lives and I've screwed up my kids and I've done this and done that." Like, why didn't somebody tell me this years ago?
Because you wouldn't have
Why was it?
listened.
Because I wouldn't have listened. Exactly. Because we're hard-headed and we don't. But we have to find the way. That we have to continue to keep talking about it and finding a way, because more and more it's getting out there.
Yes.
Because I can tell that. I can tell that because now when we're talking to people as a police executive and hiring people nowadays, they're so much more in tune to their own personal wellness than we ever were in our lives.
Yeah.
We get upset because they ask, "Oh, well, how much vacation time do I get? Or when do I have off the next time?"
Right.
And we're looking at them like, do you know this is police work, you dumbass? Do
Right.
you realize that?
Right. We
Do,
work
do you
until we're
realize?
dead.
But see,
Yes.
but that's our fault. That is our fault because we have to change that mentality.
Yes.
And we try to do that in saying, you have to make time for your people to deal with things. You have to look at that and not let them go through what we went through. And make it okay for them to have a hard time instead of telling them suck it up and move on. Because
Yeah.
that's what put us where we are. That's what put us where we are.
Imagine my dad's crew, in the 70s, 80s, going to talk to a mental health therapist. It was
Hell no.
never even talked about. They would have been like, man up, they would have been burning someone's car down in the parking lot, like, making fun of them or whatever. And I came on in 2004 and it wasn't big. People didn't talk about it then either. And now it's like, I don't care. If you think less of me because I'm getting help, or you think I'm crazy, or you think I'm this, I don't really care what you think about me. And it's taken me a long time to get there. And I'm trying to teach that to my kids as well. Like, you have to do what's best for you because the other people, they're not living your life. they're not at home worrying about you at night, so I need to worry about myself. And again, which is one of the hardest things to do, because police officers we're the helpers, we're the fixers, but fixing yourself and looking at your own demons is something that we don't want to do. And we don't want to admit it, that we're flawed or that we can't do it.
We suck at that.
Yeah.
We're perfect.
100%.
But here's what we're perfect at. We're perfect at getting that call and solving the problems of everyone else.
Yes.
We cannot solve our own problems.
No.
Our issues, our problems, the things that we do, we just set it aside or we push it away and we go do whatever.
Yes.
I mean, back in the day, like you talked about your dad, what would they go do? They, like you said earlier, they sit on the front steps, have a couple beers,
Yes.
complain about what happened, bullshit about it, go back to work the next day, and they're done, because that's the way they were taught to cope.
Right.
And,
right.
and that's the way we were taught to cope. But it doesn't make it the right way.
No.
But I think you're right. Now, having that voice, having those voices come out like yourself, and having that opportunity to now say things, it's slowly changing. You can slowly see the change of where people are now really looking at this from an organizational standpoint,
Yes.
not just a personal standpoint, and saying, hey, we need to take care of our people. We need to find a way to do this. And luckily, unfortunate for us that it took that long, but fortunate for those coming behind us that they can do that. But you know what? I'm going to go back and say, fortunate for us, we're still here and we're learning how to do that.
True.
So fortunately for us, we're taking this time, and you're taking this time to see that, to recognize it, but to not also help others see that and recognize it.
Right.
So
And that's what we do.
We're in the right. Yeah, we're in the right direction.
We are.
I think we're in the right direction. It's just a lot of hard work because you're trying to change years and years of organizational culture.
Absolutely. And you're going to hit a wall every now and again. And I was raised, you don't give up, you keep going. So I'll either go around the wall or I'm going to climb up the wall and figure it out. But, Chris, you tell me like a problem, I'm going to have it solved for you in, 5 minutes and be like, here's the advice. I don't understand why you're not doing it. And you're going to tell me, well, why don't you take your own advice? Which is very hard for us to do,
We're not good at that.
No, and I wish that I could change that, but I feel like that's just in our personalities.
But we're becoming good at that.
Right.
We are, us on this podcast, the people that we talk to, the people that have been on this podcast, the people that are out in this space, we're becoming good at that.
True.
And that's why we're out there, and that's why we're doing what we're doing.
You're right.
So I talked a little bit about my friend Barbara Rubel.
Yes.
And I had said something to Carrie before we came on. There is a book that she wrote. I think it was the first book she wrote, and it was for the same instance. Her father was a New York City police officer and passed away. And I believe, I'm trying to remember, she's going to kill me if I don't remember the name.
Probably.
I
will help
didn't get
her.
a chance. So it's called, but I didn't get a chance. It's about her not being able to say goodbye and trying to make sense of it. And I would recommend that to you, and I've told you that I think that that's a person for you to reach out with that would probably help you a lot and help you see that, because she is a awesome person, and I'll say that every time I talk about her on here. I love her. She's somebody who has that knowledge and is willing to help any law enforcement officer or first responder.
Then those are our people.
Yep, because she's been there, seen it, and she uses her voice for that.
I'm definitely going to hit her up. But it's funny you say, people writing books. I know you've written a book, and I just said to my friends the other day I think I'm going to write a book. And they're like, well, what are you going to call it? I'm going to call it Hold My Vodka. You think you're having a bad day? Nice. Hold my vodka.
That's a pretty good name. I like that.
Nobody steal that.
So it's copyrighted already.
Right. I need a patent. I need a patent. And I just thought, this is, if we can't laugh at ourselves either at the shitty things that have come our way, then we're losing it. You know, like it's over, it's done. And, you know, it's never, and maybe I will bring this up with Barbara, is, you know, growing and moving on with your life and things like that, you never know when things are going to hit. You know, I still can smell my dad's cologne and I could still hear his voice in my head yelling at me about something I'm sure I did wrong. But I also, when I qualified last year, we qualify once a year. I qualified on our range and I literally had tears rolling down my face after I fired my first round, because what kept going on in my head was, this is the last sound that my dad heard. And I just, out of nowhere, it came to me. You know, you're thinking like, you can't be upset at work. Like, this is crazy. Pull it together. You know, again, that, you know,
Right.
suck it up. But I didn't even think about that when I went there that day, that this would have bothered me. And it did. And I worked through it. And I, you know, every day, like you said, every day I get up, it's work. It's, you know, like other things that people have, addictions and that they have to work at it every day to get better. Same with this and grief and things like that. I believe that we have to work at things to get better every day, to not stay in that dark place.
Carrie, I thank you very much for taking the time. I thank you very much for doing what you're doing. I have to get this correctly because, Barbara, I don't want you killing me, okay? It's But I Didn't Say Goodbye by Barbara Rubel. And it's available at Amazon. And then soon after that, you can get Hold My Vodka by Carrie Matthews, because that's coming soon.
It's coming soon. I'm going to send it to you first. I definitely will send you the copy first.
I will definitely appreciate that. But I'm going to give you a chance, Carrie, if you want to leave everybody with a parting thought. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I just want to, if you're still listening to this and if you've made it through all this, I want to thank you and make you just realize to yourself that you matter and every day is a new day. And to take on all that stress and things that first responders do, there are people that want to hear it. And there are people that want to help you. And we are all the same. Like Chris said, there are so many of us out there that have been in similar situations that we can talk you through it. And my ending quote that I always say to everybody is, your life matters. As always, your life matters. So thank you again, Chris, for having me on.
I think I'm going to leave it with that. We'll see you the next time. Thank you, Carrie. Take care. Be safe. And we will see you down the road.
You've been listening to the Deep Blue Project. As a father, husband, friend, and someone who loves to chat about anything and everything, Chris brings over 3 decades of public service experience to the table. With a background in firefighting and law enforcement, along with degrees in criminal justice and behavioral science, he's seen it all, and he's learned a thing or two along the way. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on LinkedIn and X at Deep Blue Project. Find our website at deepblueproject.com. And to reach out, send an email to deepblueproject@outlook.com. Keep keeping it real, and we'll see you next time on the Deep Blue Project.